Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today's video is not necessarily going to be, it's definitely not a tutorial on the My Sword Bible application. Rather, we're going to get into some Bible study. But since we are going to be using the My Sword Bible app, you're going to be able to see how I use it and what benefits or what tools you can you have access to and what you can do with it. But today what I really want to talk about is a particular topic that we're going to get into from 2 Thessalonians 2:3. And just a little bit of background. This is something that I've blogged on in the past. I've got a blog, and I haven't actually put anything on it recently. We have a website that we are now using, and most of anything new that I do now will probably go on that website. But on the blog, I had written about this, and I've actually got it up on a computer screen right in front of me, and I'm going to use it as a bit of an outline. But I guess without any further ado, no more jibber jabber, I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So 2 Thessalonians 2:3, it says, let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of destruction. Now, even though that is a comma, we're going to end that there, because what we want to talk about is inside of that particular verse. So let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness. Okay. So to give you a little bit of a background or maybe some context to go into here, what most people agree on is that this is referring to the end times. This is a passage that is talking about the end times. It's talking about the falling away, and we're going to look at that particular phrase, and we're gonna compare it to some other versions, and we're going to see how those other versions deal with that Greek word in this instance. So let's go ahead and get into that. So my version, the one that I like to use, is the Scriptures, the 2009 version, and it says falling away. So let's see how other versions deal with this. Here, this is the ABP, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. It uses defection. Falling away. And I want to highlight this particular version right here. I believe it's called the Bible in Basic English. And it says that there will be a falling away from the faith. Now, I just want to give this as kind of a warning or a red flag. From the faith does not appear to be in any, I guess, original version that I have found. What I think is actually going on is that the people that decided to, create this version of the Bible, they have input that in there for, in an attempt to be clear or to help the reader and understand what is going on. And here in a few minutes, I'm actually going to read a definition of what might be the, I guess, another English word to come from this Greek word that we're going to talk about. And in that, you're going to kind of get the idea of why they decided to put that in there. But whether you agree with this or not, there may be some places where your doctrine or your theology or your viewpoint may differ from that of whoever put together that particular Bible version, and you're going to find that you're going to read something and that's not really there in the original, and only through looking at other versions and getting in depth yourself are you going to find that, hey, you know what, that's not in the original. And it may be detrimental. In this particular case, it may or may not. I'll leave that for you to decide. But there might be some places in other scriptures where they decide to add some things for clarity, and it may not be really clear at all. It may be actually removing the truth, or at least blocking you from the truth, and it's putting in that particular person's theology or their particular doctrinal beliefs on that particular area. But that's really all I'm going to say about that. Just be careful, because there are some translations that like to put these things in there. Their intention is to be clear, but I believe that it can be dangerous because, like I said, they could be putting some things in there that shouldn't be. So let's look at some more things here. They say apostasy. Let's see, revolt is another way that people deal with it. Let's keep going. I believe there's one more that I want to look at. Rebellion. Okay, so this one particular Greek word, they say defection, falling away, revolt, and apostasy and rebellion. So let's look at this actual word and see what it is, and we'll find that it is the word apostasia, and it means rebellion. And in the King James, it's translated as falling away or forsake. And you can see that it's defection from truth and apostasy. And that definition that I wanted to read to you a minute ago is on the word apostasy. And if you were to do a Google search or something on the word apostasy, you'll find that it's the abandonment or the renunciation of a religious or political belief. And in this particular case, that's what they have done here. They've said, this is a neat little glitch, I guess, with mice on this Bible, is that when you go back to a screen, when you click on it, it goes all the way up to the top. So when this particular version put falling away from the faith, that's kind of what they're going on, is they're saying, okay, well, it's the abandonment or the renunciation of a religious or political belief. And that may be okay, but in this particular case, I think that's kind of missing the mark. And I will explain that as we continue to go. But what I want to make, I guess, sure that you understand is that when we're reading the Bible, the point of view or the perspective that is the most important is God's point of view. And we get that because we can get that by letting the Bible define the Bible. If we're not getting God's point of view, what we're getting is we're getting man's point of view, and that can be from bias or doctrinal belief or whatever. So, when we go to church and we listen to our pastors, or we get a book and we're reading a scholar or a teacher or whatever, we don't need to just take their word for it. We need to look into it and find out what the Bible actually says. And that's where we're going to get the true meaning or the true definition. And that's something that I've done in the past several years here, is that I've had to go back, and I've wanted to go back, and I've taken some terms and some things that I thought were pretty clear for me, and I've gone back and I've found, okay, what does this mean as far as the Bible? And I did a study, and it turns out that I've not always been correct, and like I said, my beliefs and my the doctrines and things that I had were all based on things that I'd been taught and I've listened to. But we need to be like the Bereans, in that when we do hear teachings and things like that, we go and we search the scriptures, and we see if these things are so. But anyway, so we've got this word apostasia, okay, and we saw how other translations deal with it. And one more thing before I get away from this particular verse, I'm going to come down here and click on the Bible, and I'm going to go back. Before I come away from this particular verse, because this is what we're going to pursue. We're going to pursue falling away. I wanted to kind of touch bases on this man of lawlessness. So, man of lawlessness, that's what some people believe to be the Antichrist. But let's look at this, and this is something interesting that I found, and I found that there are some variants to this, that all the manuscripts don't exactly agree on the wording here, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go back to compare, And the way that the ABP says is man of sin, and it uses the strong number 266, which is hamartia. And you can see that it means a sin, offense, and sin. But as we go down, that's 266. As we go down to other Greek, you'll see it here, but it's not here. And we don't have a Strong's number, but I'll go down further, and you'll see here this is 458 and not 266. And it is the word anomia, and it is lawlessness. And I'll select this, and it says illegality, violation of the law, wickedness, transgression of the law, and unrighteousness. So it's interesting. So we have lawlessness, meaning transgression of the law, and sin is not a wrong or a bad translation. Hamartia. I guess that's what hamartia means. But we got to look at what the Bible tells us what sin is. And the Bible tells us in 1 John 3:5, I believe. Let's just jump over there real quick, since it's easy to do. 1 John 3. Okay, it's not 5. Everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. So let's go back in here. I'm going to look at this word for lawlessness. Anomia. And anomia is actually based off of two different words. Is a prefix meaning without, and nomia comes from nomos. And what we can do is, I went to Strong's, and it tells you the origin of that word. So the origin is anomos, and like I said, is without, and that's what this says here. It says it's destitute of the Mosaic law, departing from the law, a violator of the law, lawless or wicked. But what about nomos? What does nomos mean? And I believe if I click on this, we're going to get the word nomos. And what's interesting is, the Old Testament was translated into Greek, some 200 or so years before the birth of Jesus. And I believe that nomos was the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew word Torah. So I think when you see the word Torah, the Greek word nomos is there. And it could be, any of these other ones as well. But anomos means without law. So everyone doing sin also is without law, and sin is without law. Does that make sense? Also in Matthew chapter 5, and I'm getting off of my topic here a little bit. I think it's 5 or 7. Let's see. It's 7. Yeah, not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, or Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the heavens. Many shall say to me in that day, Master, Master, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done many mighty works in your name? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who work lawlessness. And again, that word is anomia, and it means those who are without the law or the Torah, those who are not doing the Torah. So let's go back. Let's see, where did we want to go? We were looking at anomia, okay? So anomia is lawlessness, but it's also, like I said, it's being without the law. So let's go and check out our main scripture, the starting scripture. And we see that there's a falling away, and apostasy is coming, and that the man of without Torah is coming, is going to be revealed. And you'll see that this has to do with this, okay? The falling away. So if you and I were, if we were trying to explain to somebody what the apostasy was, I would have said some things like they have turned their back on God or Jesus, that they have renounced their faith, they don't believe anymore, certain things like that, that they are no longer, Christian. But I think that there's something more going on. And I guess the whole point of what I'm getting to is that there are some that are waiting for this great falling away. They believe that this is a yet future event. I hold the belief that this has already happened, and I'll show you why. So if we go back and we look at this particular word, we're going to find that there are only, I have clicked on the wrong word. Where are we at? Let's see. Verse 3, defection, apostasy. There we go. So I'm going to click on, I can click on this. This is like a concordance, but I like the way that this one has it worded better. So I'm going to go down here. This is Strong's, but if you scroll down, it shows us the total amount of occurrences in the King James. And you'll see that there's only 2 here. And there's something that's called the law of first mention. And the law of first mention states that basically where the word is first mentioned in the Bible, then that's where you can get your understanding. Well, it's interesting because while Acts is before 2 Thessalonians, I think I actually did a study and found that 2 Thessalonians was actually written prior to that. But I really don't know that for sure. But either way, there's something called the law of first mention. But in this case, what we're going to do is, instead of using the law of first mention, we're just going to use it as an example of, hey, how was this particular word used before in the Bible? And then we'll kind of go from there. So in Acts 21:21, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea of the context here as well. So here, Paul, he's already been, converted. I won't get into that, but he's basically started to believe that Jesus is the Messiah that he and his people have been long waiting for. So at first he didn't believe that, and he persecuted those that did. But because of an experience that he had with Jesus, with Yeshua, on the road to Damascus, he is now a believer. And so he's coming back to Jerusalem from probably some of these journeys that he's on, these missionary trips. And he's come back, and some fellow believers, they greet him, and he was relating one by one what God had been doing among the, here we go again, going all the way up to the top. Every time I switch, and I think it has to do with this mouse. But anyway, what the nations or Gentiles were, what was being done among the Gentiles through his service. And when they heard it, they praised the Master or the Lord, and they said to him, "You see, brother, how many thousands of Jews there are who have believed." Okay, what have they believed? They've also believed that Jesus is their Messiah. And they are all ardent or zealous for the Torah. And I double click there. But they have been informed about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses. Now this is just another way of saying Torah. Okay, it's the books of Moses, and they contain the Pentateuch or Genesis through Deuteronomy, and it's commonly called the Torah or Moshe. And I like how it's just going back and forth on me like that. I wish it would stop. There we go. Maybe that'll help. But saying not to circumcise the children, nor to walk according to the practices. What are the practices? There are the Torah. Okay, what then is it? They shall certainly hear that you have come. So do this. What we say to you, we have 4 men who have taken a vow. And I believe that this is a Nazirite vow that they have taken. Take them and be cleansed with them and pay their expenses so that they shave their heads. And this is important. And all shall know that what they have been informed about you is not so. Okay, so what were they informed? They were informed that you teach all the Jews who are among the nations to forsake the Torah of God, really. So then they'll know that what they have been informed about you is not so, but that you yourself also walk orderly, keeping the Torah. So he's being obedient, right? He's still being obedient to God's commands. So even though he has, I keep doing little air quotes for conversion because, personally, I don't believe he was converted. He is an Israelite that formerly did not believe that Jesus was his Messiah, but now he does. And I don't believe that Jesus came here to create a new religion. I don't believe that at all. So this, the thing that came out of it, Christianity, okay. But so anyway, he came to know his Messiah, and in his coming to know Messiah, he continued to keep the Torah. He continued to keep the commands. And he doesn't keep the commands. He doesn't follow the Torah for salvation. He gets his salvation from Jesus, from Yeshua. But because he loves God, he continues to keep the commands. And that's what the Bible tells us. He says, if we love him, we will keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome, right? So what does any of this have to do with the word apostasy? Well, let's look at it. Let's go up here, and I've got 21 highlighted. We're going to go into the ABP, and we're going to see that the word here is defection, and it is the word apostasy. So how does that tie into it? It says, but they have been informed about you that you teach all the Jews who are among you, among the nations, to forsake the Torah, forsake Moses. He's not talking about the man Moses again. He's talking about the Torah, forsake the commandments of God. So that's where we get the word apostasy. So the nations to apostatize. They're convinced that he teaches the Jews among the nations to fall away from the Torah. Those are all different ways that you can translate this. But when you look at it, you'll see that it says defect. You teach them to defect from Moses, teaching the Jews to forsake Moses, to give up the law of Moses. See, this one tells us, okay, like I said before, they're adding words. This particular version likes to add words, and in this case, it does add clarity, but still, they're adding things that are not there, and I really don't like that. This one says, who are among the Gentiles to withdraw from Moses, among the nations apostasy from Moses. And you can see what I'm trying to talk about now is that this one says you do not need to obey the law of Moses any longer. Okay, this is what they were taught. But again, if we remember what it says when you continue reading, it says, but you need to do this so that they can know that these things are not so. So you see what I'm saying. That apostasy in this particular case is talking about falling away from the commands of God. Well, what's interesting here is if we were to go and let's choose this word again. All right. And what I want to do this time is I want to see what Hebrew words tie in with this Greek. And what I'm going to show you here is what I think to be a little bit of a shortcoming of this particular app, or at least the modules that I have in showing you some things. So what we're interested in is kind of like what we see here. This shows the Greek word, and these are the Hebrew equivalents for that word. And you've got the word ra'ah, and mered, and ma'al, and belial. And so let's go ahead and click on this. And there's belial, and we'll go ahead and click on this, and it'll bring up a window. We can see that it means worthlessness. Okay, that's not quite what we're talking about. We're looking for something along the lines of apostasy and falling away. Okay, so let's close. Let's click on ma'al. This one says treachery or unfaithful. Still not quite. Mered, and it says rebellion. So we're getting close, right? Rebellion is kind of like apostasy. In fact, one translation flat out said rebellion. And again, rebellion, if you're a child rebelling from your parents, you're rebelling from their rules and their instructions that they have for you as a child. You are rebelling against your parents. You're not wanting to do what they tell you to do. And in a sense, that's what we, as followers of Christ or followers of God, we don't want to do what he's told us to do, and in that is sin. Because again, what does 1 John 3 say that sin is? It says that sin is the transgression of the law or the Torah. So let's check out something else. Finally, the last word is ra'ah, and you can see the stuff up here. It doesn't really have anything to do with rebellion or apostasy. But let me show you something else. I'm going to go back to the Bible. I'm going to click on my version that I like, and we're going to go to Isaiah, and I passed it. There it is, Isaiah, and I believe it's going to be chapter 1. Yes, so we're going to start in verse 4. Alas, sinning nation, a people loaded with crookedness, a seed of evildoers, sons acting corruptly. They have forsaken Yahweh. This is in Hebrew his name. There's lots of different possibilities here. Some people believe Yahweh. Some people believe Yehovah. Some people believe Yahuwah or something along those lines. But it says they have forsaken Yahweh. They have provoked the Holy One. Set apart is holy. The Holy One of Israel. They went backward. Why should you be stricken anymore? You continue in apostasy. All the head is sick and all the heart faints. So what is this word apostasy? Is it any of the ones that we looked at? Well, it turns out this particular verse is not, or this particular word is not the one of the ones that we saw. Instead, it's this one that looks like Sarah. It's Sarah. And Sarah, it means turning aside. And look down here, Strong's apostasy. Continuing rebellion. And what you'll see is when you look up this particular word, you'll find that it's used in conjunction, or I guess to describe falling away from God's instruction or his Torah. And there's one version, or one verse, or passage we're going to look at, and it's Deuteronomy 13. And there's a group that I like. It's a ministry called 119 Ministries. And they have a teaching called the Deuteronomy 13 test. And it's basically when a prophet, a so-called prophet, or a teacher, or somebody, even somebody who claimed to be the Messiah, would come before the people and would even do these works. There is this way that they would test them. And the way that they would test them is they would see if they were calling them to go after false gods, and if they would call them to not follow and to be obedient to God's commands. And if this particular prophet were doing those things, then they would know that they would need to stone and to purge this person from their midst, like it says here in verse 5. But it says, when there arises among you a prophet or dreamer of dreams, and he shall give you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder shall come true. Okay, so they've got works or actions here that are coming true. It says, but when they say to you, let us go after other false gods, mighty ones, it's not false, but other gods, which you have not known, and serve them. Do not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for Yahweh your God is trying you, he's testing you, to see whether you love God, love Yahweh your God with all your heart, with all your being. Walk after Yahweh your God and fear him and guard his commands and obey his voice and serve him and cling to him. And that prophet or dreamer of dreams is put to death because he has spoken apostasy against Yahweh. So what is apostasy here? Apostasy is going after false gods, which you do not know, and serving them. What does God say is serving him? Serving him is walking after Yahweh your God, fearing him, guarding his commands, obeying his voice. That's serving and clinging to him, okay? So it's interesting here. And one thing that I found recently while I was looking this stuff up is I saw some synonyms for apostasy, and it's interesting to note what the antonyms, so synonyms are like words, antonyms are opposites. So I was noticing some antonyms for apostasia, and I thought it was interesting that the antonyms for apostasia were the Greek strong number 1342. So let's see what the easiest way is to get to that. Let's go here, and I'm going to backspace and put in 1342, and I'm going to hit the blue enter button, and I'm going to see that it's not doing anything. Okay, there we go. We want to get out of that. So let's actually go up here to this one, and it's dikaios. Dikaios means just, and it's justice, even righteous. Okay, and the other one is dikaiosune, and I may be mispronouncing this, but dikaiosune, and that means righteousness. Okay, so the opposite of apostasy is righteousness. Okay, and it's interesting. Let's take a look at where some of these verses are, and it talks about all these verses of righteousness, where it says, trying to think of a good verse to tell you, but I will tell you this verse. What is righteousness? What does the Bible say righteousness is? Well, it's interesting that in Deuteronomy 6, let's go all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to see that the Bible tells us that it is righteousness for us when we guard to do all this command before Yahweh our God. What command? Look, all of the Torah. It's righteousness when we guard or keep. When we, shamar is the word in Hebrew. When we guard or keep all this command before Yahweh our God as He has commanded us. So when we're obedient, that is righteousness. And I also did a study. What does the Bible say righteousness is? So we have this understanding that, and this is getting off my topic here, but we have this understanding that, okay, our righteousness is as filthy rags, and there is none righteous, no, not one. Well, it's interesting that the original verse that quote is from, there's none righteous, no, not one, the word is actually good. There are none good, no, not one. But when it says that our righteousness is as filthy rags, that's true. That we cannot be righteous on our own enough to where we can earn our salvation. Our salvation is not from our own. It says that by faith we're saved. By grace through faith that we are saved, not of our own selves, right? It is the gift of God. But we also know that in James that our faith has to produce works. And what are those works? Well, those works are obedience, and our obedience does bring us righteousness. So, again, we're taught there's none righteous, no, not one, and that our righteousness is filthy rags. But we also learn that, hey, Abraham was a righteous man. Okay, so that doesn't really fit that there's none righteous, no, not one. Also, Ananias was considered righteous, the man that prayed over Paul. John the Baptist's parents were considered righteous, and it actually tells us why they were righteous. Let's check this out. It's in Luke. Yeah. There was in the day of Herod, Herodus, the king of Judah, a certain priest named Zechariah, of the division of Abia, and his wife was of the daughters of Aaron. Okay, so she was a direct line in the direct line from Aaron, and her name was Elisheva, or Elizabeth. And they were both righteous before God, blamelessly walking in all the commands and righteousnesses of Yahweh. So when we use the Bible to explain, then we see that, hey, this idea that none are righteous, no, not one, doesn't really fit with what the rest of the Bible tells us, because we're told over and over again that these people are righteous. In the book of Revelation, he says to put on our own righteousness. But that righteousness is not enough, because we are not blameless to save us. So that's why we had to have Jesus, or Yeshua. So the point of all this is, and what I said to you earlier, is that if we go back to our first verse in 2 Thessalonians, if we believe that this falling away is that there's going to be a time when people all decide to just leave the faith, then yeah, I guess we are waiting for that still. But if the falling away or the apostasy is the falling or forsaking of the commands of God, the Torah of God, then like I told you before, I believe that we're already there. Because what is the main thing that the church believes now is that the commands or the Torah of God is done away with. That's what people believe that Jesus says when he's talking in Matthew chapter 5, where he says that I did not come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Well, it kind of is what's the word? The first part of the verse kind of destroys what people are saying about what they think the second part is, and that is he didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill. Well, they think to fulfill means that he's done it, so there's no need for it anymore. And there's some confusing things in Paul's writings that makes us think, okay, well, that's probably true. But, if we keep reading in Matthew chapter 5, we read that it says that heaven and earth shall pass away before one of the smallest little teeny details of the Torah and the prophets are gone. So, I don't know about you, but heaven and earth are still here. So we need to look at what Jesus says about the commands. What's interesting is it's an old Pharisaic saying about destroying and fulfilling the law. And Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy. Well, back then, amongst the Pharisees, you were known to be destroying the law if you incorrectly interpreted the Torah. But you were known to be fulfilling the law if you correctly interpreted. So Jesus, Yeshua, was saying here, hey, I didn't come to incorrectly interpret. I came to correctly interpret the law. And did you know that the Jews actually believe that when the Messiah comes, he's going to be able to interpret even the very spaces in the law? And so anyway, I believe that the falling away has already happened. I've been told that following the Torah is bondage and legalism. But the Bible tells us that if we love him, we will obey him. We will keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome. To go on another tangent, we're told that, hey, when Peter says that shall we put around the Gentiles that have come into faith, and did you know that if a Gentile comes into faith, they're no longer Gentiles? It says that you who are once Gentiles, you once were far off, but you've been brought near. You are part of the commonwealth of Israel. But people say, well, or back in Peter, he says, shall we put on these people a yoke that neither we nor our forefathers could bear? But later on, he says, hey, you know what? All of Moses is taught to everybody in the synagogues on every Shabbat. That's something that we miss. So if he's saying that the yoke that neither we nor our forefathers could bear, if that's supposed to be Torah, then what is it saying when it says that if we love him, we keep his commands, and his commands are not burdensome? And there's also one in the Old Testament, in the Torah, where it says that the Torah is not far off. It is not too difficult for you. It's not far off so that it's hard, but it's very near you so that you can do it. Okay? God's not putting something on us that is impossible. Okay? Because he says that if you do these things, I will bless you. If they're so hard to do and it's impossible, does he have zero intention of really blessing us in the first place? That he has every intention to curse us? Because he says, if you do all of these things that I've laid before you, then you will be blessed. But if you do not, you will be cursed. That's in Deuteronomy. Does he really have an intention to never ever bless his people? No, it's because his Torah and his commands are not burdensome. They're not too difficult. We need to read the Bible and see what the Bible says. And we need to quit listening to some of the garbage that's being taught to us, because it's just not true. It's just not right. And we have to have the mindset of those who wrote the Bible so that we can understand the meaning, the true meaning of what they're trying to get across to us. If we can't do that, then we're bound to completely botch up our understanding of the Scripture. And with that, I think I've gone way off of my desired, I guess, path. But I hope this did a couple of things. A, I hope you learned something. Whether you agree with me or not, you know, it's something to chew on. But another thing is that, you know, I've made a couple videos on this My Sword Bible app. It's nice to see different things that you can do with it. And, you know, I'm still not using the paid parts of this. All of this that I'm doing, it's all free. And it may not be all, like I said, in the native download portion where you can download modules, but it's all online. And you can go on there and you can find something. If you find a My Sword module, you can throw it on there. If you find an eSword module, you can convert it over to a My Sword module and you can put it on your phone. And it doesn't eat up a whole lot of space either, and it's nice to have all these tools at your fingertips. And if you got a phone like me, a Samsung, you can do DeX and put it on a monitor, or you can do something called Samsung Connect. I think that's what it's called, and you can put it on on your computer, and you can have a full screen Bible application that's completely free, and you can always have it at your fingertips because we always have our phones with us. So you can really have the sword of the Bible constantly at your fingertips. So if you've enjoyed this, you know, let me know. And if you think I'm wrong, then let me know. But let's be Christ-like in the way that we talk to people, in the way that we deal with one another. But I hope it's been a blessing. But for now, I'm going to end this video and just say shalom.